What is up, guys? Wrestling Premier is here. Now, you guys chose this video over a video idea such as No Way Out 2008, every Raw guest host, that kind of stuff. Wade Barrett, the guy who I assumed would become the first English WWE champion. Wade Barrett, the guy who I assumed was going to be a mainstay in WWE's main event scene. In this video, I cover the bare knuckle brawler's run in WWE and answer the questions as to why he didn't become a main eventer. Now, some of you may know the answer. As a matter of fact, many of you do know the answer probably. But in these videos, I cover their run basically and just answer the question. It's simple as that. You might want to stick around to watch this video as I'm going to cover his entire WWE run. Anyways, this is the third episode of this series, and not to sound repetitive, which I might be, but more episodes will come in the future. I want you guys to comment who you want next. Alex Riley, Mr. Kennedy, MVP, DDP in WWE, whatever. Whoever it is you guys want, that's who I'm going to choose for the next episode. Right now, let's get into it. Wade Barrett, real name Stu Bennett, was born on August 10th, 1980 in Penwortham, Lancashire, England. Growing up, Bennett's favorite wrestler was Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, and his favorite matchup was the IC title match between Bret Hart and the Bulldog at SummerSlam. Bennett earned a degree in marine biology from the University of Liverpool, and from there he decided to become a bare-knuckle fighter. In one instance, Bennett won a fight and his reward was a significant amount of money. This was in Budapest, by the way. He was walking in an alleyway looking to depart Hungary, but then he was suddenly stabbed. The scar was 12 inches. Nonetheless, Bennett managed to escape with the money and, most importantly, his life. In a WWE.com interview, Barrett had this to say about his scar, and I quote, "As you know, my reputation as a bare-knuckle fighter often precedes me. It's how I made my way in the world before being signed to WWE. That being said, due to the less than legal nature of that particular sport, I'm not so inclined to give too many details about how this 12-inch scar came into my possession. These are the types of things that tend to happen when you're fighting in a ex-communist country." He also said this too. "As you might imagine, the scar didn't come from the actual fight which I won soundly, but from the getaway afterward. Let's just say the local authorities weren't thrilled with the outcome or the fact that I was leaving with their money. All told, I somehow managed to keep my winnings, though I have a constant reminder of why I'll never visit that country ever again." Damn, this is such a wild story. Bennett won the fight, but they didn't really want him to take the cash. He lost a significant amount of blood, but managed to escape Hungary. Thankfully, he escaped. Thank God. Now, I don't know the exact timeline of all of this, but I assume it was after he graduated from the University of Liverpool. Bennett, after this, decided to become a professional wrestler. He was trained by both John Ritchie and Al Snow. Bennett's ring name was Stu Sanders. He wrestled in a few promotions in England and Wales like All-Star Wrestling, Dropkicks Wrestling, and it wasn't until October of 2007 where Bennett was signed to WWE. He was sent down to OVW where he honed his skills. Now, Bennett already appeared on Raw as a security guard when he escorted DX out of the arena, and Sheamus was there too, and I believe they got an ass-kicking too. A few months after signing the developmental deal with OVW, Barrett was transferred to FCW because WWE ended their partnership with OVW. During his time in Florida Championship Wrestling, Barrett was arrested and charged for battery of a law enforcement officer. Now, there's quite more to the story. It wasn't like Barrett knew that was a police officer. Story goes, he bumped into a woman outside a bar and she started a confrontation. Barrett ignored this and he walked away when a plainclothed officer tried to stop him. Barrett on this incident said that if he knew that it was an officer, then he wouldn't have picked a fight or left the scene. Barrett was released the next day and the charges were dropped, so it wasn't really a big deal. I just had to mention it because it's pretty much forgotten at this point. I completely forgot about it until I thought about his FCW run. In FCW, Wade Barrett became tag team champions with Drew McIntyre, and the two held the titles for about 2 months before losing them back to the team of Eric Escobar, remember that guy, and Primo. From there, he changed his name twice, once to Lawrence Knight, and finally he was Wade Barrett. His time in SCW at this point wasn't in the ring. He was on the announce team because he suffered an injury. It wasn't until February 2010 where Barrett was called up to the main roster. He was set to be a part of the new show called NXT, and he was one of the 8 rookies. The premise of the show was that there was 8 rookies and 1 dream. The winner won a WWE contract and a WWE title match. Yup, the WWE title, not the US or the IC title. Now, these rookies were obviously ready for the main roster. They participated in some ridiculously funny competitions, Some of these competitions were so absolutely horrible to watch, but some of them were funny due to the characters in them, like Michael Tarver dropping a keg, Titus O'Neil dropping a keg, Daniel Bryan hanging on the monkey bars. There was just some random stuff on that show. Oh, how could I forget this one? Michael McGillicuddy cutting some horrendous promos. This is the genesis of Michael McGillicuddy. Anyways, from the beginning, Barrett was mostly seen as the favorite along with David Otunga. He was mentored by Chris Jericho, and in storyline this would help him because he ended up winning that season's NXT. Now, Barrett was the most deserving winner in my opinion. Obviously, Daniel Bryan could have won it and he wouldn't have been less deserving, but Bryan in my opinion is the underdog. He was the guy who had a feud in place against The Miz, unlike the other guys, so Barrett was the most deserving. Also, Barrett from day one was being pushed as one of the top guys, along with David Otunga. Anyways, once Barrett debuted on Raw, he claimed that he's gonna accomplish something that no one has ever done. He made us wait to find out. Later that night, he ended up destroying John Cena along with the other rookies, and they became the Nexus. Now, the Nexus was such a unique group in a way. They felt like the NWO, but they were hungry young guys. They wanted to prove that they actually belonged in WWE. Now, for this video's purposes, I'm going to make the Nexus run short because I already made a full video on their run, which you could go check out right now. As you all know, Nexus's leader was Wade Barrett, and he obviously did the talking, so he was seen as the top prospect in that group. The Nexus tormented John Cena for several weeks, and this led to Cena fighting back. When Cena fought back, he didn't fight the Nexus alone. He decided to enlist the help of several top WWE superstars, and that led to a 14-man tag match at SummerSlam. At SummerSlam, the Nexus's momentum was derailed by one man, John Cena. If I had to emphasize exactly what Super Cena is, I'd show you this matchup because Cena was at a 2-on-1 disadvantage. He took a DDT on the concrete floor, which would have knocked him out for the rest of the match. And that reminds me of the story of Ricky Steamboat when he took a DDT from Jake Roberts on the concrete floor, and that was so brutal in itself. He suffered a concussion from it. What I'm trying to say is that this should have been the ending of the match if they were going to do it, because if you wanted Cena to make a comeback, you shouldn't have added that spot to the match. That spot didn't end the match, and Cena managed to win the matchup. Super Cena ended the show celebrating, and the Nexus were basically destroyed. Yeah, sure, after SummerSlam they had some good moments, but their downfall could be traced to one single moment. The moment Cena beat them at SummerSlam. Now, Nexus in itself was done. They had to make CM Punk the leader of the group to give them a new story and try to have him start over again. Barrett was then moved to SmackDown along with Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater, where they formed the Core. Oh, and Ezekiel Jackson was in the group too. The problem with this group is the fact that they were seen as Nexus 2.0. They literally just left Nexus and they started a new group on SmackDown. Plus, they didn't even last long. They probably had more theme songs than months as a faction. They had several different versions of a theme song, and the most memorable one was the last one because it ended up being Barrett's entrance theme song. That theme song reminds me of WWE 12 so much. But on the other side, you could say that these three were close with each other and they thought it'd be a great idea to stick together on SmackDown. Now, to me, the most memorable moments the Core had were when they got their asses handed to them at WrestleMania 27 in about 2 minutes, and the moment when Barrett won the IC title from Kofi Kingston. Other than that, I remember when Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel lost the tag titles to Cena and Miz, and they won them the same night. I remember when Santino Marella formed a faction called Apple, Ally People powered by loathing everything that you stand for. That group didn't even last long itself. It lasted just one night. As for the Core, they began to crumble apart. Slater and Gabriel lost their tag titles to Big Show and Kane, and a few weeks later, Ezekiel Jackson walked out on the Core, and this led to the trio attacking Jackson, turning him into a face. This led to a feud between Barrett and Jackson, which ended with Ezekiel Jackson becoming the new Intercontinental Champion. Slater and Gabriel, meanwhile, decided that since Barrett walked out on him in a match, the Core was over. Plus, Barrett even said that they were nothing without him, and they didn't like this, so the group was over. And that was the Core in a nutshell. I could have obviously talked about it much longer, but once again, for video purposes, we gotta keep it short. From there, Wade Barrett participated in the Money in the Bank ladder match. He was seen as the favorite along with Cody Rhodes, but it ended up being Daniel Bryan who won the briefcase, which was weird to me. Not in a bad way. Bryan winning the briefcase was awesome, and he is the most successful one of these guys in the match other than Kane. But Barrett was being built up, and I literally thought it was his time. Nonetheless, Bryan was the right choice in the end, cause look where he ended up. Following that, Barrett had a small feud with Daniel Bryan. In November of 2011, Barrett began a feud with Randy Orton. This was the beginning of Barrett's push. The Barrett Barrage captained a team that featured Hunico, Jack Swagger, Cody Rhodes, and Dolph Ziggler against the Vipers team that featured Kofi Kingston, Sin Cara, who suffered a patellar tendon rupture during the match after he dived out the ring, Mason Ryan, and Sheamus. Barrett's team ended up winning after Rhodes got an RKO from Orton after trying to distract them, and Barrett capitalized on this by hitting Wasteland for the victory. After that, they faced off in a tables match at TLC, which Orton won by RKOing Barrett through a table in midair. The feud would reach its climax on the December 30th episode of SmackDown when Orton and Barrett brawled backstage, and it ended when Barrett pushed Orton down a flight of stairs. This feud would go on a break for a month because Orton suffered a herniated disc. And once Orton returned at the Rumble in St. Louis, he eliminated Barrett, thus restarting the feud. It finally culminated in a no DQ match on the February 3rd, 2012 episode of SmackDown. Orton won the match and the feud. Right after this feud, rumors began circulating about Barrett winning Money in the Bank. Apparently he was set to win the briefcase at WrestleMania, but he suffered an injury on the February 20th episode of Raw. He was in a battle royal and he dislocated his shoulder when Big Show threw Dolph Ziggler onto him. At one point you could hear Barrett curse. He was set to get a huge push, and then and there it was gone. I found a PW Insider article about Barrett's push being halted. Wade Barrett underwent surgery on his dislocated elbow earlier this week after suffering the injury during last week's 10-man battle royal on Raw's Super Show. WWE stated via company website that he would be sidelined for at least 6 to 8 weeks. The injury is more severe than the initial diagnosis. He is now expected to be sidelined for 3 to 4 months. Barrett's injury has caused change to the WrestleMania 28 card, as a Money in the Bank ladder match was scheduled for the pay-per-view event, with the English grappler pegged as the winner of the briefcase. With Barrett sidelined, the match has been scrapped altogether. One thing I didn't get about this was the fact that they scrapped the match. Why didn't they have Ziggler or Cody Rhodes win it? Anyways, Barrett was actually sidelined for 7 months, not 4. In August of 2012, vignettes of Barrett played on WWE television. His character this time around was different. His bare-knuckle brawler past was integrated into his character, and he returned with a beard. When he returned at the time, I thought he was going to become a main eventer, because that beard made him look like a star. Once Barrett returned, he went on an undefeated streak that would be ended by mini John Cena, Sheamus on the October 19th episode of SmackDown. Following that, he feuded with Kofi Kingston over the Intercontinental Championship. He initially failed to win the title at TLC, but on the final Raw of 2012, Barrett finally won the gold. As champ, Barrett feuded with Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas at this point was still in NXT. The feud began when Dallas managed to eliminate Barrett during the Rumble match, and this didn't sit well with Barrett, so he decided to eliminate Dallas himself. The following night, Barrett challenged Dallas to a match, non-title by the way. Bo Dallas came out and he scored a upset victory against the Intercontinental Champion. This feud culminated on the April 24, 2013 episode of NXT when Barrett visited Full Sail and he beat Dallas. Also, during this time period, Wade Barrett feuded with The Miz. I completely forgot what this feud was about. I think it was about the Marine and a movie that Wade Barrett was in, Dead Man Down or something like that. This led to a matchup between the two at WrestleMania, but on the pre-show, unfortunately. Miz ended up making Barrett tap out to the figure 4 leg lock to become the new Intercontinental Champion. This title reign didn't last long for the Awesome One, as he lost the title back to Barrett the next night on Raw. The fans literally cheered Barrett during the match, but that could be because they really hated Miz, or they were smart fans, or they actually liked Barrett. What do you think? Because this was the Raw after WrestleMania, which was always attended by smart fans. Barrett held the title for 2 months before Curtis Axel won the title at Payback. Following this, Barrett didn't really do anything on WWE TV. I mean, he did feud with Daniel Bryan for a few weeks after the leader of the Yes Movement shaved his beard off, but it didn't even last long. The reason why Bryan shaved off Barrett's beard is because Vince McMahon told Barrett to shave off Bryan's beard in the first place. After this, Barrett disappeared from WWE TV. This was because he had some visa issues. Right before he departed the US, Barrett developed a new character on the JBL and Cole show called Bad News Barrett. He usually appeared on the show to be the bearer of bad news. I believe the Bad News Barrett name was coined by Cody Rhodes. He literally made up that name on an episode of the show. On the December 2nd, 2013 episode of Raw, Wade Barrett finally returned. Barrett stood on a podium giving some bad news to the audience. He insulted them, and over time this caught on with the fans. They started cheering him. On the night after WrestleMania 30, Wade Barrett returned to the ring. He faced Rey Mysterio, and the fans were booing Rey. They were cheering Barrett over Rey. Come on. They were booing Rey. I couldn't believe it. Like, how could you boo Rey Mysterio? But this was the post-WrestleMania crowd, and you know how they are. After this match, it looked like a face turn was on the horizon because everyone was on his side. One thing to note about this is the fact that this was Rey Mysterio's final match in WWE before returning at the Rumble in 2018. Barrett from there began building momentum and he won the Intercontinental Championship from Big E at Extreme Rules. It looked like Barrett was back on track, but then he separated his shoulder 2 days before Money in the Bank. He was scheduled to participate in the ladder match, but he was pulled from the matchup. Since Barrett was going to be out for 5 months, he was stripped of the Intercontinental Championship. Once he returned, he was still over. He returned at Survivor Series, and many in the arena were excited to see Barrett back. During the promo, Barrett said that WWE will positively flourish under a new era, the era of Bad News Barrett. It was great to see him back again. When Barrett officially returned to the ring, he won the Intercontinental Championship for a 4th time. Yeah, it seems like he was getting a push once again, but unfortunately for Barrett, this was the time period where WWE made him much quieter. He basically lost most of his character. Like, the fans were cheering for him, and WWE decided to have Barrett not deliver bad news at all. In an interview, Barrett had this to say about his bad news run. And I quote, "I was specifically told the reason I wasn't allowed to say my catchphrase, 'I'm afraid I've got some bad news anymore,' was that it was getting a positive response and they wanted me to be a heel. I personally didn't agree with that philosophy. I felt, look, if they're going to cheer for me, they like this. Let's go with that. I've never been a babyface before. Let's go with it." The decision was made above my pay grade that wasn't going to be the case and that I was Bad News Barrett, a guy who didn't cut promos and wasn't giving out bad news. So that kind of instigated the transition into a completely different character and the King Grunt at that point. So for me personally, like I say, I didn't agree with it, but it wasn't my decision to make ultimately. I believe he should have turned face. It might have been interesting to see him deliver bad news to heels and good news to the audience. At WrestleMania, Barrett lost the IC title to Daniel Bryan in a 7-man ladder match. Since WWE didn't want Barrett to deliver bad news, they decided to have him win King of the Ring. He became King Barrett, and to be honest, I don't remember anything King Barrett did. I do remember the time when he teamed up with Stardust, who was underutilized too, in a tag team match against Stephen Amell and Neville. Other than that, I remember the time when he got slapped by Wayne Rooney. He took a jab at Rooney and Man United's championship chances that season. He then went up to the former Champions League winner and he got slapped. During this time period, Barrett formed a partnership with Sheamus. This partnership led to Sheamus forming the League of Nations along with Alberto Del Rio and Rusev. Kevin Owens was originally going to be in it, but he was sick the night they formed. Thank God he didn't join the group. This group halted all of the guys' momentum. Seriously, they were better off not being in this group. Del Rio had just returned and he beat Cena for the title. Sheamus was the new champion. Barrett was better off without the group, and so was Rusev. They were initially there to help Roman Reigns, and after that, they just fell apart. Following their feud with Roman Reigns, the League of Nations feuded with the New Day, who had just turned face. This led to a matchup between the two groups at WrestleMania. Barrett didn't compete in the match, and he only accompanied the group to the ring. He stood at ringside. After the match, Barrett said that there's no 3 men who could go toe-to-toe with the League of Nations. This led to Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, and Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out. They got an ass whooping, and Barrett took all of the finishers from the Legends. The next night on Raw, the League of Nations kicked Barrett out the group after he took a pinfall in their tag title match. This was basically Barrett's final appearance in WWE. On May 6, 2016, Wade Barrett was released from his WWE contract. Now, Barrett wanted to leave. It wasn't like he was released. In an interview on Talk is Jericho, Barrett had this to say about his final days. "I'd already got to the point where I knew I was moving on, and the thought of signing the new 3-year deal that they had for me at that point, when I felt that way, nothing good would come out of it. I was miserable being around wrestling and being on the road and stuff like that, and for me to not even have the fight in me, to not even try to make the improvement I could try to make suggestions, that told me, look, if I did re-sign here and take whatever money they're offering me, financially, it might make sense, but in terms of what I'm going to be putting out of it, it's going to be bad, and things are not going to improve around there at all." So that for me was like, yeah, whatever happens to me, I have to leave and reground, and we'll see where the future takes me. Now, this is what Barrett thought about his final days. He basically thought nothing good was going to come out of his new 3-year deal, and you obviously know that. In my opinion, Barrett should have gotten a big push. Yeah, sure. He was injured in 2012 and 2014, and that may have played a part in him not getting a push. I mean, what else could be the reason why he didn't become a main eventer? They had big plans for him. That is all I could think of. He was talented on the microphone. He was decent in the ring. He looked like a star. That bad news gimmick was going well for him, and he could have gotten a face run out of it. but they decided to keep him quiet. That's all I could think of. His injuries are the only reason I could think of for why he didn't become a main eventer. I didn't even mention his Nexus stuff because that's so well known. John Cena halted the Nexus's momentum. It's simple as that. Anyways, I thought Barrett was going to be a main eventer back in 2010, 11, and 12. It's such a shame he got injured twice when he was starting to get a big push. Otherwise, I think he'd be a guaranteed world champion. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a wasteland on the like button and perhaps the elbow on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.